Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Shit, where the hell is that fucking asshole Snake, or Chimaru anyways? The teen then demanded loudly, and Nightwing cursed as he realized that Slade and Ravager were gone as well. Damn it, I turn my back for 1 second and he gets away again. Night grumbled to himself while Naruto started to mutter numerous curses in Japanese, a deep scowl across his face. Well, this is just wonderful. Now I need to go out and find that stupid hippie teen before he causes more hell for this world than he did in my world. And knowing him, he's going to be going out experimenting on every fucking metahuman he finds. Oh, and not only that, but he'll probably also look for some way to become immortal in this world as well. The blonde grumbled while rubbing his face with a deep scowl, Nightwing turning back around to glare at him for a moment. Unfortunately X, you still need to go to jail for. Night started to say only to blink as Naruto smirked, Kid Wicket coming out of the street and grabbing him and Jinx before vanishing into the shadows. Looking around, the dark-haired teen then scowled when he saw that the rest of Tartarus had also escaped thanks to the teleporting teen as well. Never mind. We'll catch them next time. Night grumbled out once more, while Cyborg snickered into one hand, and Starfire continued to scowl towards Kitten and Beast Boy. Breathing out a sigh, Night then looked to Raven with a frown, the girl narrowing her eyes. Do not start with me right now, Nightwing. I've had a very long day. She stated flatly while poking his chest, and then pulled her cloak in on herself, vanishing in a swirl of black and making Night frown. Shaking his head for a moment, Cyborg then walked over to his friend and placed an arm over his shoulders with a smirk. Night, just lay off it, man. Nar's not such a bad guy, and he and Ray are really good together. Cyborg stated with a shake of his head, smirking slightly as he quoted the blonde-haired super thief, though it wasn't the first time. Cyborg, he's a villain, we're heroes, we have to take him in jail. It's our job, remember? Nightwing stated while giving the Titanium Titan an annoyed look, and Cyborg rolled his eyes before looking to Starfire. What do you say, Star? Should we throw Nar in jail? Cyborg asked, drawing the red head from her glaring and making her blink in confusion. I asked if you think we should throw Naruto in jail cause he's Red X and all. Cyborg repeated, and a look crossed Starfire's features, the girl floating into the air, crossing her arms, and considering that question for a moment. Well, it is our duty to protect the city from the villains. And yet I cannot say I wish to do so with the Red X, as he has helped both myself and my sister. Starfire admitted while looking to her shoes, Nightwing twitching while looking over to Donna and Kid Flash for support. I hate to say it, Rich, but besides that one day of non-stop pranks, I haven't seen him do one evil thing. I mean, yeah, him stealing from you is bad and all, but that's about it, since no one else is trying to press charges. Kid Flash explained, and Nightwing had to give the speedster that, and since X's new suit didn't run on Xenothium, it also meant he couldn't be taken in for possession of illegal materials. Wait, he still had the damn belt, and actually could be taken in for that instead of Naruto. Crap. Unfortunately, I am in agreement with Bart, Richard. It seems to me that this is more for the sake of your own personal vendetta against Red X than it is for justice. Besides that, he has saved us all numerous times already, and I've yet to see him actually steal anything. At least not that we can prove. Donna replied grudgingly while Nightwing muttered something under his breath, and then raised a brow as a happy Beast Boy walked over with a smile. Yo dudes, what's up? Beast Boy asked, and Nightwing turned to the green-furred member of his team, with his arms crossed over his chest. Beast Boy, do you think we need to catch X or not? Night asked his teammate with a flat expression, and Beast Boy widened his eyes before looking to either side nervously. Oh well. Dude, Nar isn't such a bad guy, and I mean, it's not like it's a priority to catch him, and villains are people too. And Raven would totally kill us, if we did and all. Maybe, but. Beast Boy started to say before looking around nervously for a moment, giving a quick salute, and then ducked behind a smirking Cyborg for protection from Nightwing. Guys, X is a criminal. It's our job to capture him and all other criminals in the city. We can't just let him run wild when we're supposed to be protecting the city from villains like him. Nightwing reminded the group with his arms crossed over his chest, and Beast Boy frowned for a moment while looking out from behind Cyborg. Technically speaking here, dude, we're vigilantes like Batman, and since that's the case, we're also breaking a ton of laws just by doing what we do. Thereby, seeing as vigilantism is also against the law, wouldn't that mean you'd have to go to jail with the rest of us going as well? Beast Boy retorted, and Nightwing blinked for a moment, the rest of the Titans staring at the green-furred teen. What? Back in the Doom Patrol I learned a lot. One tiny tidbit is for all intents and purposes we're all vigilantes, and therefore we're also breaking the law. Beast Boy reminded with a nod of his head, and the other Titans continued to stare at him. Besides the fact that he's right, you seriously need to chill out, Knight. Cyborg stated, and Nightwing gave him an annoyed look, Cyborg sighing as he looked to the others. Alright, show of hands, who wants to actively try and catch us, thus ruining Ray's relationship, and probably bringing about her unholy wrath upon us all. Cyborg asked with a smirk, while Nightwing gaped at the teen, as none of the team raised their hand for obvious reasons. Looks like the votes are Knight, you're on own on this one. Cyborg stated with a nod, and Knight twitched before muttering under his breath with a frown. However, before Knight could shout at his team about Naruto being a criminal and they were heroes, Batman walked over to them. Batman. Knight stated darkly, and the Dark Knight merely raised a brow while Dr. Fate, Etrigan and Shaeris stood behind him. Nightwing. Batman said while nodding to the former Boy Wonder, and then looked to the other Titans. Congratulations seem to be in order, we've managed to survive and ultimately stop the end of the world. Batman stated, and Beast Boy grinned over to Kid Flash, the red-haired speedster, doing the same. And as such we wish to offer you all these. Shaeris said while handing each of the Titans a tiny earphone, handing one extra to Nightwing, clearly for Raven. What are these things? Cyborg questioned while looking at his, and Dr. Fate chuckled slightly to himself. Those are JLU communicators. Welcome to a select group of honorary JLU members. Dr. Fate explained, then took a thoughtful look, seemingly ignoring the looks on the Titans' faces. However, I do believe that your old friends Speedy and Aqualab are also members. Dr. Fate then admitted, and Knight grunted for a moment before looking at the earphone, and stuck it into his utility belt. Dude. We have a membership with the JLU. Awesome. Beast Boy exclaimed, and Shaeris shook her head before sighing. You're honorary members, which means that you're essentially on call, while remaining freelance. Shaeris stated, and Beast Boy blinked before nodding his head slowly, Etrigan mumbling something to himself. Anyways, if you ever need our help again, and you will, call us. Batman then stated while giving a look to the teens, Dr. Fate nodding his head in agreement. This is Batman to Watchtower, 4 to bring up. The Dark Knight then said, while placing a finger to his ear, the 4 JLU members vanishing in a flash of light as he did. Dude, that is like, so cool. Beast Boy cried out, and Cyborg frowned before bopping the green-furred teen on the head. A foot splashed against green-tinted water, while 2 figures made their way down through the sewers. Looking around with a flashlight in one hand, Slade suddenly narrowed his eye dangerously. What is it, father? Ravager questioned, and Slade turned towards her for only a moment before straightening his back as a familiar ivory-skinned serpent man walked out of the shadows, a cocky smirk upon his lips as always. Nothing, Rose, just an old snake. Slade replied, and a chuckle escaped from Orochimaru's lips as he walked towards the two. So, everything is back to normal. You've gotten your body back. I believe all that remains is for you to complete your end of the bargain. Orochimaru noted while holding on to the Guardian's axe, Slade twitching slightly as he looked at the wicked weapon for a moment, then to its new owner. You are correct, a deal is a deal. Slade agreed while reaching into his utility belt and pulled out a slip of paper from it. This is the location of the research and formula you'll need to gain my enhanced regeneration ability. However, I must make one last request, leave the Titans out of any of your future plans. They're mine to deal with. Slade stated while holding the paper up, and Orochimaru merely reached out and took it from the masked man with a cruel smirk across his face. Very good, Slade-san, our bargain is complete. And do not worry. I have no interest in those children. Naruto-kun is so much more interesting. Orochimaru replied with a smirk still splitting his face, and Slade made in him sound. And now I do believe that I still have some work to do myself. Orochimaru noted darkly while still smirking like a serpent, Slade merely narrowing his soul eye as the other man walked past him and Ravager. Oh. And Slade-san. Orochimaru then said while turning slightly to see the man from the corner of his eye, Slade doing the same. Don't try and get in my way, it would be most hazardous to your continued health, not to mention your continued existence in this world. And I'd say you want to keep your skin attached this time. Orochimaru warned darkly, the axe in his hand suddenly setting ablaze, as if to make his point, and then made his way further down into the sewer, Slade narrowing his soul eye as the man vanished into the shadows. Father, was it wise to give someone like him access to such a high rate of regeneration? Ravager questioned of Slade worriedly, and the masked madman scoffed while folding his arms behind his back. Are you questioning my decisions, apprentice? The man asked of the girl flatly, and Ravager widened her eyes before quickly shaking her head. No, of course not, father. She replied while bowing her head, and Slade turned and looked down at her coldly. Then it shouldn't matter what I do. Besides that, it should be obvious to you that Orochimaru is far more valuable to us as an ally than he would be as an enemy. Slade stated while glaring at Ravager, the girl quickly straightening up before bowing her head to her father. Yes. Forgive me for not thinking of something so obvious, father. Ravager replied, and Slade hummed lightly while turning his back on the girl, eye closed and his arms crossed behind his back. Very well. But we must go, we have to ready some plans of our own. The Titans may have new allies, but an old enemy is soon to return. Slade stated darkly, while walking further into the depths of the sewers, Ravager watching on silently for a brief moment, and then slowly following behind him. Metropolis. Ayane looked to the sky with a blink of her eyes, looking back to the city around her. She frowned as everyone went about their business as if nothing had happened. Then again, how do you explain everyone in the city turning to stone or hell itself suddenly coming to life? The magenta-haired girl wondered before slowly walking down the streets of Metropolis, slipping her hands into her pockets as she did. Closing her eyes, she decided to leave well enough alone, and not ask too many questions when something strange happened in this already strange universe. How the hell can you think like that? This place may be strange, but being petrified isn't normal by any circumstances. Sakura shouted in her head, and Ayane grunted for a moment, muttering under her breath about annoying head voices, as she made her way back to her office. Her office of sorts also happened to be an abandoned warehouse. She got the idea to live in it when she saw how often police neglected to check them out, and also because the docks were fairly empty at night. This allowed her to help most villains who wanted medical attention at night, while during the day they'd have to sneak in. Smirking to herself, Ayane thought about how she managed to, in a week, get most of the villains in town coming to her. Helping a wounded girl by the name of Livewire had been all she needed, as the electrically themed villainess spread the word about her in no time. Given her ability to change into electricity, whenever Livewire wanted something to be known, it'd get known at lightning-phase speed. The amazing fact she'd been able to heal Livewire's wounds given her, to put it mildly, unique physiology also helped out, as it meant they didn't need to be completely normal for help. Thus far, her healing ninjutsu even seemed to work well with the wounds of aliens. Of course, Ayane also realized this was because her techniques just temporarily enhanced their natural healing without modifying anything. However, it didn't mean that they had to know that little tidbit as well. Shaking her head for a bit, Ayane then yawned as she walked to the docks and over to the final warehouse in the area. Soon coming to it, she looked around for a moment before walking inside and closing the door behind her. Hey Bubblegum, where you been? A familiar nasally and very annoying voice questioned, and Ayane twitched before looking to a chair at the side of the room. Sitting within the chair is a woman with bright blue hair standing straight up in numerous spikes, electric blue eyes, pale blue skin, black lips, and has a very slight physique. She wears a black leotard with a lightning bolt cut down the center, thigh-length black boots, and blue gloves over her hands. This was the supervillain known as Livewire, who had unfortunately latched herself onto Ayane after the magenta-haired girl healed her. Why, she didn't know. Maybe it was because Ayane was fun to annoy, so she stuck around to get a rise out of her. Maybe she wanted to stay on her good side, so Ayane would heal her for free, or maybe she actually liked her. In any case, Ayane had the constant annoyance of Livewire being around her. I told you to stop calling me that. My hair is magenta, not pink. Ayane shouted at Livewire, and the blue-haired woman merely smirked at her for a moment before rubbing her chin. Not pink. Well, it sure does look pink to me, Bubblegum. Livewire retorted, and Ayane twitched visibly while crossing her arms over her chest with a scowl. Shut it, you stupid blueberry bitch. Ayane shouted while removing her coat and tossing it onto a coat rack at her side, Livewire looking from her hair to her skin before rolling her eyes with a smirk. Come on Bubblegum, don't be like that. Livewire mocked playfully, and Ayane flipped her the bird with a scowl across her face. Snickering into her hand, Livewire then watched the magenta-haired girl make her way over to glare down at her darkly. What do you want, Blueberry? Ayane demanded, and Livewire adopted a mock-hurt look while looking at the younger girl. I'm insulted. I'm shocked you could ever think I would only come here too. She started to say indignantly, then smirked when Ayane raised a brow and crossed her arms over her chest. Alright. I wanted to know if maybe you and that weird chakra scalpel thing of yours wouldn't want to help me with all blue boy. Livewire replied before changing into a bolt of lightning, and then reforming at Ayane's side. One arm slipped over the younger girl's shoulders. "Cause the way I see it, your scalpel thing goes through the skin, right? So if that's the case, maybe you can like cut a few of his muscles for me, and we could rob a couple hundred banks. I could absorb a lot of energy, and then I could even take over the world, and help with that one boy problem of yours." Livewire offered while leaning over her cheek against Ayane's own, the magenta-haired girl reaching up to pinch the bridge of her nose as she does. "And are Superman's muscles any less durable than his skin?" Ayane demanded while giving the blue-haired woman a look, Livewire merely shrugging her shoulders in response. "Hell if I know, but the guy runs on solar power, right? So since his muscles don't get any direct sunlight, they got to be a little less durable. Right?" Livewire mused, then questioned, and Ayane muttered something under her breath before blowing into her bangs tiredly. "No, not right. It's his body that absorbs the rays, and his powers are more like some kind of a genetic quirk that makes him as tough as he is, since he's an alien his species developed on another planet. And since that's the case, then it's also possible that his muscles are also as hard as steel," Ayane explained to the blue-haired woman, and Livewire pouted before shrugging her shoulders. "Besides that, I have to stay out of jail to heal morons like you when you all get hurt." Ayane reminded the older woman, and Livewire nodded her head, knowing well how many villains had started coming to the magenta-haired girl recently. Yeah, bubblegum, whatever," Livewire said flippantly while turning into a bolt of lightning that zipped around the room before landing on the desk in the warehouse. Turning with a sigh, Ayane glared upon seeing Livewire lying on her side with one arm propping up her head with a smirk. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Ayane growled out and questioned, and Livewire grinned towards her. "Just going to make the place a little more welcoming is all," she replied, and Ayane palmed her face, muttering something under her breath in Japanese before walking past the desk and into a series of walls she'd set up as a room. "Hey, where are you going?" Livewire questioned while languidly turning from her position on the desk, and Ayane pinched the bridge of her nose. "Back here and away from you. If someone comes by, tell them I'll be out in a minute or something," Ayane replied while walking over to a medical bed she'd managed to pilfer a couple weeks before, and then laid on it and leaned back. Deciding to get comfortable and take a nap, the girl then crossed her arms behind her head and closed one eye, leaving the other half open. "When the hell did I become your damn receptionist, bubblegum?" Livewire demanded while sitting up, and a smirk crossed over Ayane's features. "You're the one sitting at the reception desk, Blueberry," she replied, and Livewire rolled her eyes, before laying back down with one eye closed, Ayane sighing as she turned slightly, closed both her eyes, and fell into a silent slumber. Tartarus HQ. The HQ is literally rocking with music playing at a volume that should be, and probably is, illegal. Inside, however, the majority of Tartarus is in ops, a party going in full swing with Billy handing beer out to all his clones. "Alright boys and gals, we just took down one seriously nasty demon, and proved once and for all that we're a group that isn't to be taken lightly, so let's party," Mammoth exclaimed with a grin before he and Private slammed their heads together. Shaking her head while sitting in midair with her legs crossed, Donnie looked over to Blackfire with a sigh. "You know, that really explains their lack of intelligence," the Gosling girl noted with a sigh, and the alien princess nodded her head in full agreement with her. Nearby, Kid Wicked is somehow sleeping through the noise, while Seymour was with Gizmo as they manned the music, Twila dancing to the side and laughing as she fell on her face. Absent from the fun are Jinx and Naruto, both seemingly missing, while Blackfire got up and strolled over to the boys. "That's enough of that from you, Twila," Blackfire stated while pushing the clown girl down and stretched out her arms into the air. "Now then, move over, Earthlings, cause the Queen of the Galaxy is about to show you her stuff," the dark-haired Tamaranian declared arrogantly, shaking her hips as she moves to the beat of the music, the boy's wolf whistling as she does so. Sighing once more, Donnie leaned forward, placing her chin on her hands with her elbows on her knees for support. "It's official, they're all insane," the girl said mostly to herself, while Twila jumped onto her back with a snicker and a grin. "Nice one," the clown girl exclaimed, and Donnie palmed her face as the more idiotic members of the team, aka Billy Numerous, Mammoth, and Private, started chugging beer over to the side. Meanwhile, deep in the base, Jinx is sitting in her room with a sad frown across her face, idly looking at a picture of her, Mammoth, Gizmo, and Naruto back when they were in the HIV Academy. Things were so much more simple back then, she mumbled to herself while fiddling with the string of beads on her right forearm for a moment. Lifting her arm up, she then stared at the single ivory bead, gazing at the crimson-red swirl inside of it. This one is different than the others. Those are all made of lacquered wood. But this one isn't. She muttered to herself, while wondering what it was about the bead that seemed to stand out. Besides its obvious difference in color, it also seemed larger, smoother, and colder in some way. Like a stone. She mumbled before hearing someone clear his or her throat from behind her. Turning around, the pink-haired girl then frowned when she saw Raven standing in her doorway with her arms crossed over her chest. "What do you want?" Jinx demanded while giving the violet-eyed girl an annoyed look, and Raven reached up and pinched the bridge of her nose. "For once, I just want to talk," Raven replied, and "Are you serious?" look crossed Jinx's face. "Yes, I know that I usually don't want to talk to you, but this is about something important." Raven offered an explanation to the girl before walking over and sitting down on Jinx's bed, the pink-haired girl turning around, arms crossed and an expectant look on her face. "Alright then, talk, but make it quick," Jinx ordered, and Raven twitched slightly before taking a breath and closing her eyes. "Look, first of all I wanted to know why you risked your life to help us fight the Jubi," Raven replied while looking at Jinx strangely, the pink-haired girl twitching as she drummed her fingers on her arm. "Isn't that obvious? I've fought you multiple times, gone up against Poison Ivy's evil psychotic plants, a hellish and demonified version of you, a bunch of ninja, and now I've even fought against an army of Japanese yokai for temp. How the hell can't you tell?" Jinx demanded of Raven angrily, and the half-demon sorceress merely narrowed her violet eyes onto the pink-haired girl dangerously. "I just want to hear you actually say it for once. I want to be sure this isn't like when you had that crush on Cyborg. I want to know that it's something that won't just fade away after a month or two," Raven replied, and Jinx's eyes flared dangerously before she grabbed the girl by the front of her cloak and glared into her in the eyes. "Fine. I love him. I love all the stupid things he does. Hell, I even love how loyal to you he is even when it keeps us apart," Jinx shouted at Raven, and the violet-haired girl merely weathered it as Jinx released her and threw her arms into the air. "I love that he's a slacker and a bit of a goof at times, but also a great leader. I love how he's able to connect with all of us even given our vastly different backgrounds. I love how he's willing to help each of us with any of our problems no matter what it might be." Jinx continued while placing her hands over her face and taking several deep breaths. "I even love him when he purposely pisses me off to get a rise out of me. Hell, I can't even stay mad at him when we argue, a few minutes of it, and I'm agreeing to whatever he wants," Jinx stated while glaring at Raven heatedly, the half-demoness merely watching on silently as she did. "I've loved him for. Hell, I don't even remember when it started anymore. I just know I love him alright. Are you happy now?" Jinx demanded of the sorceress, and Raven actually blinked before slowly nodding her head. Taking a breath, Jinx then sat back and leaned back in her seat, staring at her ceiling intently while Raven continued to gaze at her. "I told you what you wanted to hear, right? Can't you leave me alone now?" Jinx asked the girl miserably, and Raven sighed before crossing her arms over her chest. "Listen, Jinx, I'll be honest, and say that I really don't like you," Raven started to say, and Jinx looked up with a frown. "The feeling is completely mutual," she stated, and Raven gave her a flat look for a moment before taking a quick breath. "However, the thing is that I don't know why we don't get along," Raven continued, and Jinx raised a brow while tilting her head to one side. "Look, we both love Naruto, so why can't either of us put up with the other for his sake without breaking into a fight? Moreover, why is it that we each like similar things yet we seem to hate each other with a blind bloody passion that borders on the psychotic?" Raven asked, and Jinx shrugged her shoulders. She never really thought about it, only thing she could guess being jealousy. "I don't know your reason, but as for me, I think it might have something to do with me feeling threatened by your relationship with him," Raven admitted, and Jinx blinked repeatedly before giving the girl a look. "Raven, you have got to be kidding me. You're Temp's girlfriend, and I'm just his teammate, like you and Nightwing are just teammates. Besides, he thinks the world of you. He'd sooner cut off his own hand than leave you. Believe me, he's just that loyal. Not only that, but in looks, I hate to admit it, but you have more curves, you're more full-bodied than me, you have nicer legs than I do, a bigger." Jinx started to list aloud, and Raven quickly stopped her, a slight blush on her face from the indirect compliments. "Be that as it may, Jinx, he's known you longer, you're both criminals, he trains with you all the time, you live together, you know how he thinks, and acts better than even I do, and if he hadn't met me when he did, I can honestly say he'd probably be with you right now instead of me," Raven explained, and Jinx tilted her head to one side, her brows still raised, and the dark titan let out a soft sigh. What I'm trying to say is that I attack, argue, and fight with you because I'm actually scared of the thought of losing him to you, or anyone else for that matter. I love Naruto as well, and I don't want to lose him. Raven admitted, and Jinx continued to stare at the Dark Titan as she shifted uncomfortably and wrapped her arms over her torso. Jinx, I know we've had our differences, but for his sake, I want to bury the hatchet for real this time. Raven stated, and Jinx gave the girl a look before sighing and leaning back in her seat, eyes closed and arms crossed behind her head. We both know that's not likely to happen, Raven. How in the hell can we bury the hatchet when I still resent you for having him? Jinx demanded of the violet-haired girl, and Raven looked at her calmly, crossing her legs and sighing. Well, that's kind of the thing. Raven mumbled while rubbing one of her arms nervously, and Jinx sighed. Just spit it out already. She growled out at the violet-haired girl, and Raven leaned over to Jinx and whispered into her ear. As she heard what the violet-haired girl was suggesting, her eyes popped open and she stared at her. You have got to be joking, I mean, how in the hell would that even work? She demanded of the other girl while giving her a strange look, Raven merely sighing as she reached up and rubbed her face. I'm not joking, and as for how it would work, well, it's Naruto's birthday, so it's sort of a gift to him, and don't think you'll just instantly get all the perks. You'll be on probation for a while till I get used to you. Raven started to explain to the pink-haired girl, but Jinx stopped her by placing her hand over her mouth and frowned. Why am I the one who's on probation? She questioned flatly, and Raven narrowed her eyes onto the pink-haired girl dangerously. Reaching up, she then pulled Jinx's hand from her mouth and frowned deeply towards her. Because in case you're forgetting, I'm the one who's doing all the compromising here. Not you. Raven replied angrily, and Jinx looked at Raven with another look. Unless you'd rather I just forget I even suggested the idea in the first place, and we go back to our usual routine of spontaneously trying to kill one another. Raven then added flatly, Jinx quickly shaking her head before clearing her throat. No? I mean, okay. So then what's this probation thing all about anyways? Jinx asked quickly while looking away from the girl, Raven silently crossing her arms before sighing softly. First of all, you can kiss and hug him as much as you want. That much is a given with this arrangement, and I won't need to know how much or even want to know when you're off doing that stuff with him. However, I do reserve the right to come on any and all dates with him to make sure you don't get up to any funny business. Also, no feeling him up or nighttime activities with him until further notice. Raven explained to the pink-haired girl simply, and Jinx blinked at the last bit before looking at her strangely. Okay. Jinx replied with a slight blush on her cheeks, but she could easily guess what Raven had meant. Nodding her head, Raven then sighed while getting up and straightened out her cloak for a moment. Alright, now that that's settled, let's go tell him about his birthday gift. Raven mused aloud, and Jinx slowly got out of her seat while staring at the violet-haired girl, when a thought suddenly came to her. But he hates his birthday. Jinx reminded quietly, and Raven nodded her head before grabbing her left wrist, taking special care not to grab the one with the string of beads on it, and pulled her out of her room and into the halls of the HQ. Right, so let's go and give him a reason not to hate it anymore. She replied, and Jinx blinked before slowly nodding her head in agreement with Raven. Walking down the halls of the HQ, Raven led Jinx down the halls of Tartarus HQ, and to a familiar door with a crimson X on the front of it. Nervous? Raven asked Jinx with a raised brow, the set pink-haired girl blinking before shaking her head. Honestly, more surprised than nervous. Especially since this was your idea. Jinx admitted truthfully, and Raven nodded her head for a moment. In my defense, it's a birthday gift for him, and a reward for the fact you're willing to fight a giant demon for Naruto. If that doesn't deserve at least a little compromising on my part, then nothing would. Besides, I need someone to help me keep him in line. Raven replied quietly and then turned to the door and exhaled a quick breath. Reaching forward, she then knocked on the door and heard Naruto mumble something inside. A few seconds later, the blonde came to the door and opened it up with a yawn, clearly worn out from his battle with the Jubi. Blinking his eyes open, the blonde-haired teen then looked from Raven to Jinx, and raised a brow. What's going on? He questioned with a raised brow, and Raven let out another breath before pushing Jinx into his arms. Blushing heavily, Jinx looked up to see a confused Naruto, who looked from Jinx to Raven with a raised brow. Kara-chan? Naruto questioned, and Raven silently turned on her heel and crossed her arms over her chest while closing her eyes. I've made a decision. Raven stated, and Naruto looked to the blushing form of Jinx in his arms for a moment before looking back to his girlfriend. And how exactly does it involve, Jinx? He questioned and Raven motioned for him to follow her, the blonde absently doing so with one arm over Jinx's shoulders. I wanted to reward her for helping to fight against the Jubi, even when it was clear she could have died. From my memories, it was actually her who inspired the others to help us fight against it, so it's her who deserves a reward. Raven replied with a nod of her head, and Naruto reached up with his free hand to rub the back of his neck. Okay. Then what kind of reward is she getting? Naruto asked with his head tilted to one side, and didn't see a bright blush appear on Jinx's face. You? Raven replied bluntly, causing Naruto to stop and gape at the girl. Wait, what? He demanded, and Raven sighed while stopping and turning around to face the blonde-haired youth. I mean, we're going to share you. Raven replied and saw the look on Naruto's face. Look, she really does deserve some kind of a reward, and it's your birthday, which you hate. So, I figured I'll kill several birds with one stone. Namely, you get a gift too good to mope about, she gets a reward for helping us, and I get someone to help me keep you in line. Besides, it's also the only way I could think to actually end the fighting between her and me. If we share, I won't feel as threatened about her taking you, since we both will have you, in a way at least, and she won't resent me for having you. Raven explained with a finger raised, and Naruto blinked for a moment before looking to the brightly blushing Jinx. It was all her idea. Jinx mumbled quietly and looked away from the blonde-haired teen's eyes, Naruto turning back to Raven with a slight smirk forming on his lips. Kar-chan, don't I get a say in this little arrangement of yours? Naruto questioned of his girlfriend with a raised brow, though the smirk on his face did little to hide his amusement with what was happening. Yep, Iro-sanin is definitely helping me from the great beyond. The blonde thought to himself and could swear that he heard a "you're welcome" from the deceased Sanin. Sighing, Raven shook her head, walked over to Naruto and pulled his free arm over her shoulders, then wrapped an arm around his waist, and gave him a look. Okay then. If you're sure this is a good idea, then I'm all for it. Naruto replied and walked down the hall with the two girls. Smirking inwardly, the blonde then looked from one girl to the other, and sighed. However, I have to admit that something tells me this is going to be a very interesting relationship from now on. Naruto admitted, and both Jinx and Raven rolled their eyes before rubbing in his sides the blonde for the crack. Not funny. Raven stated flatly before a thought came to mind, and she looked from Jinx to Naruto. And before I forget, Jinx is on temporary probation. No fooling around with her until I say so, and I can come on any dates you take her on. Raven stated, and Naruto raised a brow with a smirk before snickering to himself. Keeping her on a short leash, Hakari-chan? Naruto asked his violet-haired girlfriend with a grin on his face, and the girl huffed, while turning slightly to the side, her eyes closed and a frown across her face. Looking from Raven to Naruto for a moment, Jinx then cleared her throat to get their attention, both of them looking over to her. So, what do we do now? Jinx questioned nervously, truly having no clue how this odd relationship was ever going to work out, Naruto merely frowning in thought for a short moment. Let's go on vacation. He replied and caused both girls to stop, blink, and then give him a strange look. Sighing softly, Naruto closed his eyes and leaned his head back while explaining his reasoning. The kid knows who I am now, the city will probably find out soon enough, the JLU will probably either hunt me down, or try to get me to join them, and you guys know how much I hate hero work. So I'd just really rather not stick around for all that. Naruto explained, and both Raven and Jinx nodded their heads in agreement with him. So where do we go for a vacation? I mean, face it, a threesome like us isn't exactly inconspicuous. Jinx asked with a raised brow as she slipped her arm around his waist with Raven, and smiled slightly to herself. In response, Naruto smirked slightly before replying to the girl's question with a grin. To some out-of-the-way deserted island out in the middle of nowhere. Well, at least we would if I knew where one was. Naruto replied, and Raven blinked for a moment before clearing her throat to draw their attention to her. Actually, I do know where to find one. She admitted softly, and Naruto grinned before looking between both girls and nodding his head. Alright. Then how about we all go pack up and head out then? I'll even leave a scroll for Donnie and the others explaining where we are. Naruto offered, and Raven gave the blonde-haired teen a look. I've still got my team, remember? She chose to remind, and Naruto nodded his head, though the smirk never left his face. Yeah, but you've also just fought, not only your father, but the Jubi, and had the worst month in your entire life. Just give them a message saying you're going on vacation to center yourself or something. Naruto replied, and Raven blinked before frowning in thought for a moment. That could honestly work, and she was a little tired of always saving the city, day in and day out. She could at least have one vacation. Besides, she really did need to center herself after the month she'd had. Alright, I'll do that. Let me go get some things and I'll be right back. Raven replied while vanishing into the shadows, leaving Jinx and Naruto alone. Blinking for a moment before suddenly realizing she was alone with Naruto, a blush suddenly crawled onto the girl's cheeks. I'll go get my stuff and meet you at your room, okay? Naruto offered, and Jinx blinked before nodding her head as he turned around and ran back to his room. Shaking her head, Jinx then rocketed over to her own room and quickly looked through her closet and dressers, grabbing several clothes and laid them out. Looking around, she found an old duffel bag and then quickly started folding her clothes before stowing them into it. Grabbing a few extra when she realized she didn't know how long they'd be gone, she heard Naruto clear his throat and turned around to see him at her door. Frowning for a moment, Jinx then saw a scroll poking out of the blonde's pocket and narrowed her eyes. You used your sealing thing, didn't you? Jinx stated flatly, and Naruto nodded his head with a smirk. Care to help then? She asked, and Naruto raised a brow, causing her to pout and look at him with her hands clasped together. Please? She asked sweetly, and the blonde snickered before walking into her room to stand beside of her with a shake of his head. Geez Jinx, chill out already, you know I'll help you out whenever you really need it. Naruto replied with a smile on his face, then pulled a scroll from his waist when Jinx breathed out a sigh and took hold of his left arm. Jill. She stated suddenly, and Naruto looked down to her with a raised brow. My real name isn't Jinx, Temp, it's Jill Manx, so since we're apparently in a triad relationship of some kind, please call me Jill. Jinx explained quietly, and Naruto blinked before smiling to the girl and placing an arm over her shoulders. No problem, Jill. But my name isn't Tempest, call me Naruto. He replied, and a small smile crossed Jinx's lips as she looked up at the blonde. Alright then, Naruto. Jinx replied and quickly slipped her arms around his neck and stood up to place a kiss on his lips. Blinking surprise for a moment, the blonde slowly placed his hands onto the girl's hips and returned the kiss. Soon releasing the kiss for air, the blonde smirked when he saw the blushing, goofy look on Jinx's face. Boy, between you and Kara-chan, I swear I'm gonna die. Naruto noted aloud, and a cheeky look crossed over Jinx's features. But what a way to go. She noted aloud, and Naruto nodded his head, and then heard Raven clear her throat as she stood at the door with her arms crossed. Raising a hand before Naruto could try to explain, the violet-haired girl let out a sigh and walked over to them. Don't bother, if this triad relationship is going to work, I'm going to need to get used to this kind of thing. She reminded, and Jinx quickly extricated herself from Naruto as the blonde sealed up her clothes into his scroll and slipped it into the back of his coat pocket. Now then, I left a message for Knight and the others, and packed up some clothes. But when do you think we'll be back? Raven asked, and Naruto shrugged his shoulders before pulling both gray-skinned girls to his sides. Probably until you two can learn to play nice with each other. So. Well, we'll see how long that takes before we decide anything definite. He replied with a shrug, and Raven rolled her eyes, before pulling her power over herself, Jinx, and Naruto, all three vanishing in a swirl of black energy. The end. Kakashi sighed as he, Ino, Hinata, and Neji walked across a familiar stretch of country, Sasuke's limp body slung over his shoulders. It's strange, he's barely even moved since we got back. He's acting so defeated. Kakashi thought to himself while looking to the currently unconscious Uchiha for a moment, then sighed and gave an annoyed look to Neji and Ino. You do realize we failed our mission? Kakashi stated while giving them both a look, and Ino huffed, while placing her hands onto her hips and glaring at the silver-haired Jonin. It's not like we could have gotten him back alive, Kakashi. If we tried to take him by force, those JLU guys would have hunted us down. Not only that, not even Naruto knew how to get us back here. Returning with help from those JLU people was the only way for any of us to return, but it also meant we couldn't attempt to take Naruto. Ino reminded the man while crossing her arms, even as the massive hull that had once been the gates of Konoha suddenly came into view. Oh no. Shouldn't that have been repaired by now? Hinata questioned while looking to the gate, and Ino slowed down and looked to Neji, the whitey teen, frowning to himself. It's been almost 2 entire years since we left. The village gates should have been repaired by now. Unless something happened while we were away. Neji replied while Ino looked to Kakashi and saw the silver-haired Jonin narrow his eye on the village. Ino? Neji. Is it possible that time in that world moves at a different pace than it does in ours? Kakashi questioned while looking over to the blonde and dark-haired teen, Ino frowning for a moment before sighing. Sorry Kakashi, I didn't study any physics while I was in that high school, so I really don't know. Replied while they passed the gates, stopping and looking around with wide eyes as people were running around, people with wood and other materials for the gate heading to and fro. Does this answer your question? Questioned while turning to Kakashi, and the man narrowed his eye once more. Unfortunately, it does. Kakashi replied quietly, then shook his head and marched forward with Sasuke over his shoulder, the others following him. This is so strange. How can time move faster there than it does here? Hinata questioned while looking around, and Neji closed his eyes before frowning deeply to himself. Our two worlds exist in completely separate universes. I highly doubt that time passes at the same pace between them. Neji noted quietly as they soon came to the Hokage Tower and made their way up, staying out of the way as shinobi ran to and fro. So whilst it's been years for us, clearly only relatively short amount of time has passed here in the village. Summarized, and Neji nodded his head, Kakashi frowning as they came to the desk in front of the Hokage's office, Shizune groaning as she sat at the desk, rubbing her head with a headache. Shizune-sen, Kakashi stated and drew the woman's attention, her eyes widening for a moment before lunging forward and grabbing him by his vest. Kakashi, did you get Naruto-kun back? She demanded, and Kakashi grimaced visibly before taking a breath and giving her a look. I'm afraid that we need to report into the Hokage before anything else, Kakashi stated while pushing the woman back with one arm, and Shizune blinked for a moment before slowly nodding her head to the man. Go on in then, she mumbled before looking to Hinata, and Neji, all of whom appeared visibly older to the woman. Hey, what happened to you guys? You look older somehow, Shizune noted while looking at the three, muttering to herself as they walked into the Hokage's office. Inside, the group saw Tsunade sitting with her hands on her face, while an open bottle of sake nestled beside of her. You're drinking sake on the job again, Tsunade-sama? Kakashi questioned with a raised brow, and Tsunade's head snapped open before she lunged over the desk and grabbed the man by his vest, her left eye twitching as she snarled at him. Where the hell have you been? Tsunade demanded, and Kakashi cowered before the woman. Hey, she could break boulders with her bare hands. He really didn't want to know what she could do to him. Why haven't you kept in contact with me, Kakashi? And for that matter, where the hell is Naruto? And for that matter, where the hell is Sakura? Tsunade demanded of the silver-haired jonin, and he turned to look for aid from Neji, and Hinata. Oh no, Tsunade-sama, but we were unable to retrieve Naruto-kun, Hinata stated, and Tsunade snapped her head over and glared at the girl, Hinata slipping behind Neji as he sighed. As for Sakura, we lost track of her around the same time we were forced to abandon our mission. I believe she may still be trying to retrieve him, however that is only an assumption, Neji explained to the woman curtly, and Tsunade twitched before suddenly noticing how much older Neji, and even Hinata appeared to be. What happened to you three? She questioned, then looked at Kakashi and frowned deeply when she spotted the unconscious Sasuke on his shoulder. And for that matter, what happened to him? Tsunade questioned as she slowly released Kakashi, the man breathing out in relief while dumping Sasuke into a chair, and tiredly palmed his face for a moment. Tsunade-sama, exactly how long have we been gone? Kakashi questioned while Tsunade stared at the bandages over Sasuke's eyes. 2 months, she mumbled in reply, and Kakashi visibly winced before looking to Ino and the others. Well, where we've been, it's been nearly 2 years, Neji replied for Kakashi, and Tsunade stared at the Hyuga as if her were crazy. No, seriously, Tsunade-sama, for us it's been nearly 2 years. After we were deployed to capture Naruto, we followed him into some kind of silver portal and ended up in another world, Ino explained, and Tsunade shook her head for a moment before palming her face with a frown. Silver portal. Oh great, it's his mother's stupid teleportation technique, Tsunade grumbled out and then moved back behind her desk and sat down tiredly. You know of this technique, Tsunade-sama? Neji questioned of the woman, and Tsunade grunted before leaning back and rubbing her temples with her index fingers. Yeah. Uzumaki Kushina learned the technique from the Karasu summons, of whom she was the owner. The technique, when used properly, is supposed to transport its user to the spirit realm. According to Kushina, the technique was originally used to create the first few contracts. However, due to the dangers for humans in the spirit realm, the summons moved to our world with a reverse version of the teleportation technique. From what Kushina told me, only the Karasu, Crow Raven, Ryu, Dragon, and Akami, Wolf, summons remained behind in the spirit realm, Tsunade explained, and Kakashi frowned in thought for a moment before an idea came to mind. Perhaps with your help we could use this technique and possibly even attempt to recreate whatever mistake Naruto made to re-enter the world he's in, Kakashi noted aloud only for Neji to grunt and Ino to slap her face with a grimace. Unfortunately, we're on thin ice in that other world. If we attempt to return, there is a very real possibility for retaliation. Sasuke did manage to kill several innocent people when he looked for Naruto in that world. Neji stated, and Tsunade raised a brow for a moment before letting out a sigh, crossing her fingers and closing her eyes as she did. Unfortunately, we really need Naruto back in the village. Tsunade stated and got looks from the team in response. Do you know that Spring Country, Wave Country, Bird Country, and both the Hidden Waterfall Village and Sunagakure are all still allied to us because of Naruto? Tsunade questioned and the group was silent, Tsunade closing her eyes with a sigh. What that means is our village's alliance with those nations and villages hinges solely on Naruto. Not only that, but as the last Jinchuriki, he poses as a form of deterrent for other villages which may attack us. Tsunade continued and a frown crossed Ino's features as she listened to the Hokage. So you mean to say that you want him back because of what his presence will do for Konoha politically? Ino demanded, and Tsunade scoffed while crossing her arms over her chest with a scowl on her face. Hell no, I left Konoha for years before Naruto brought me back, remember? Hell, if the kid had just asked me for traveling papers to leave, I would have even given them to him. Tsunade replied, and Ino blinked while raising a brow, wondering what the woman was trying to get at. However, the new Fire Daimyo is concerned that since the war with Akatsuki, Fire Nation has grown weak. As such, he also believes that we need Naruto as a way to ensure our nation's continued protection from the other shinobi nations. Tsunade explained and then muttered something about paranoid teams under her breath. Wait just a minute. What do you mean by a new Fire Daimyo? Ino questioned of the blonde-haired woman, and Tsunade turned her chair around and looked out the window behind her with a deep frown. You all might want to get comfortable, it's a long story. Tsunade replied, and Kakashi looked to the others, and they all slowly moved to different seats around the room, then waited for Tsunade to explain what happened in the time they had been away from Konoha. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification, and also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.